Okay, see.
Just start?
Working?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, distinguished guest, for this opportunity that we can speak here together, because Melina and I are symbolizing two different parts of this planet, and we need to work together if we want to solve this crisis. This is really the underlying essence of this. And we want to start a little bit with telling you what we have done with our network. We were founded in Nagoya with the adoption of the strategic plan, and we are really the generation Aichi. We were there, we wanted to see this happening, and we're frustrated about this lack of implementation that we are seeing. But there's also a lot that has been done in the past 10 years. Our network has been growing massively. We're now representing 319 organizations from all over the world in 140 countries. In total, we're representing 668,000 youth all over the world. And we do not just want to represent young people here in the CBD, we're the coordination platform for youth participation, but we also want to bring change on the ground. Because what we're talking about, what we're struggling with, is nothing that we can solve in rooms like this alone. We need to do something on the ground, and Melina will talk about this in a few minutes, how we're trying to do this. This is something that we heard on Tuesday. I think this is crystal clear. The science is telling us that the house is on fire, that we're seeing a collapse of our life support system, but we're not acting as if the house is on fire. I think there is nothing more that I have to say about this. A lot of people here are calling for a Paris moment for biodiversity, but let's remember, the Paris Agreement is currently putting us on a track of 3.6 degrees warming. Is it really a Paris moment that we want? Maybe in the diplomatic sense, but we need an implementation moment where we live up to the commitments that we have given ourselves. Also, this is something that is pretty clear. The reasons where this is leading from, it's our lifestyles, it's our consumption patterns, it's overproduction. We need to address these. And I think most people here in the room are aware of this, but we need to get out of this bottle. We need to reach the people that are at the power centers, and we need to convince, Carlos said this in his speech, we need to bring ministries from other segments, and we need to make them act. Also, this is a very well-known fact. We are living in a world with rampant inequalities. And we cannot address biodiversity without addressing these inequalities. Biodiversity policy always also must be social policies. Why is this relevant for us? This is an issue, Jane just mentioned it. 207 environmental defenders, among them many young people, have been killed doing the same work that we have been doing, fighting for the protection of our environment. This is an issue that we have to give more prominent attention, and we cannot disconnect it from the other biodiversity issues that we are discussing here. And also this, a very important aspect. There is all this inequality in the world, and unfortunately, it is hitting our generation the hardest, especially in LDCs, in developing countries, in the South. You see here that most of the unemployed people are youth. And it's in all sectors. So we need to address this. And finally, the way the world is looking on us, I'm not sure if you can see it, it got a little bit too dark, I think. Yeah, you can't see it. We did a Google search yesterday about millennials. And if you type in millennials are, you find answers like millennials are lazy, millennials are just into consumption. We are being described as the generation that is apathetic, disconnected, and just spending most of their time on smartphones. And this is just not the whole truth. This is simply not what is my generation. We are taking action, and we're going to show this in the next slide. Marginalization from decision-making processes is an absolute key aspect. I think here in the CBD, we're very grateful that you, the parties, have helped us to raise our voice in our process, in this process. And I think in the past 10 years, we have made a lot of progress into empowering young people and having a stronger voice into this. But we need to bring this to other levels. We have just been organizing a number of workshops, and it's still happening that governments are wondering, what are these young people are doing? Why should we work with them? because we can be a partner. We can help these commitments that you have made happening on the ground. That's what we want to make. So include us fully. Give us this power. And finally, let's focus on the drivers, the underlying drivers. This is a question about our mindset, about values. We're not going to solve the crisis that we're in by just applying the same thinking that we have used before. Quick technological fixes is not going to solve it. And still there is this narrative going on that we can just use synthetic biology, or that we can use geoengineering to solve all our problems. The problems are way too big. This is not going to work, and this is something that we have to accept. It's a question of mindsets and values that we have to work on. And finally, this is something that we're incredibly proud of. A lot of our members of our network are going on the street every Friday. On March 15, it was more than 1 million students in 2,000 cities in 120 countries protesting for their future. And media is always showing this as just focused on climate. But the reality is, if you look at this, this is also very much about nature. Young people nowadays have been born into a hugely connected world, and we are understanding that silo thinking is not going to solve the problems. So people are very well aware that this is also about biodiversity. Greta Thunberg gave a speech about this in the European Parliament. So this movement that you're seeing on the street is also a biodiversity movement. It's a planet movement. It's a movement that wants to secure our whole planet for future generations, for all of us. And here, give over to Melina.
Yes, so I'm gonna, okay, yeah. So I'm gonna talk a bit more now here for our community in the CBD, what it is that we have been doing so far. Well, I think most of you know, we published a book, it's called The CBD in a Nutshell, to help young people and parties to engage better, more efficiently with the CBD. So we have done a lot of capacity building and empowerment. But we have been also doing our consultations, because we have been noticing that implementation of the Aichi targets has not been enough. And whereas we are the Aichi generation, we were not that present in the negotiation of the Aichi strategic plan, we are here, and we want our voices to be included in the strategic plan. We want our priorities, our values to be taken into account, because we are the ones that are going to be living in this messy world, perhaps. And so far, we have been organizing some 7, 8 capacity building workshops where we already did some preliminary consultations on the post-2020. We've reached 95 countries and about 264 youth leaders. And we also have some regional workshops and national consultations planned. And what we have been finding, so what are the trends among young people that are interested and active on biodiversity, is that transformational change for us, it is the change of mindset. It is the change of values and principles. The principles in which we are operating now is leading us to the mess that we are, where we are basically burning our house, burning our home. And we want to operate under different principles and values which are sustainable and which are the basis of living in harmony with nature. And we don't think that this is something new. We've seen what Joji has been talking, we've seen many people mentioning the contributions of indigenous and local communities and their wisdom in managing the nature and living together with them. And so here you can see it's still a draft. We are still operating in a working document, but we are pretty much concerned about fairness, equity, inclusivity, accountability, responsibility, and transparency. And also, this is for us the living in harmony with nature framework. For us, is about the integrity of the life support system, and for that to happen, we need to have a sustainable living. That means sustainable extraction, production, consumption, trade, and disposal. And for that to happen, we need effective governance, enforcement implementation with clear accountability and compliance mechanisms and an independent monitoring and review mechanisms. And all of that is never going to work if we don't have inclusive participation, empowerment, and intergenerational equity. And here, just so that you know, like we mapped out the IT targets that are existing under this framework, and in yellow is what is missing, okay? And so this is kind of like a summary of our framework. We see like these 4 priorities that they are completely interlinked and cannot happen with one without the other. And it has to be based into a core set of values and principles that will shift our thinking and our mindset to a truly sustainable world. And like just as a summary, like in terms of trends, I'm sorry, there is some glitches there, but young people are pretty much on the vibe of being local, or going back to their roots, into trying to re-understand what indigenous peoples and local communities were living, their knowledge, and how we can adapt that to our current realities with our technology, with our interconnected world. And we are doing everything that is possible, and it's in your reach and beyond to be able to achieve this, but we really need you to share your power, because even though we're here, we have a voice, we don't have the decision-making power. We don't decide where the money is gonna go, basically. Some of you might do that, so that is what we need you to do, and these are some concrete recommendations that we would like to have in the post-2020 in order to ensure like an intergenerational equity that is reflected in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. I don't have much time anymore, and we still have a video. I'm so sorry, so I'm just gonna go very quickly. But for young people, it's important to be meaningful, the participation, not just give us a voice, but make sure that we are participating and we are engaging in what you want from us. We need to have empowerment, and especially youth-led initiatives. Don't do just trainings on young people. Put them on the table and plan the training with them. And so, like, okay, sorry, can we play the video very quickly?
I imagine a future where we recognize that indigenous peoples' communities are proof that living in harmony with nature is possible.
I imagine a future where our economies do not exploit nature, but instead promote it for sustainable human development.
I imagine a future where our children have biodiversity to appreciate.
The best way which we can find to live in harmony with nature.
I imagine a future where all the people can understand the values of biodiversity and come together for conserving it.
I imagine a future where species are no longer endangered.
Biodiversity is a way of life.
Thank you. And because we want to get some like challenges, we want to challenge you a bit. Okay, so we have a couple of like challenges for each of the sectors that we saw that is in majority here. And I'm gonna start like as a little homework from your last speakers of this amazing conference. So for governments, have you like thought that you could go out and connect with marginalized groups? And since they are facing the worst of the system, maybe they can help you see where the gaps lies. And this might change the way we think about the system.
For the business sector, we ask you to really also look into the hidden impact of your business model and check your real efforts. Are you really doing enough? Is there more that you can put on top of this? Also include the social aspects of all the activities you're doing. And finally, think about, is what you're doing creating real change, including the social change, or is it just greenwashing? We need to be critical about this.
For the academia, for the researchers, are we really making all our effort to integrate traditional knowledge and their wisdom? Because they do have the answers. They might not have lived in a globalized world as we are. For that, we might have the answers under the technology. But they do have the wisdom on how to operate in an uncertain world in nature.
For all the NGOs out there, We see NGOs as a driving force to change societies and to help us to move into a better future, also for my generation and future generations. But that means that we constantly have to ask ourselves, are we just promoting the establishment? Are we promoting the business as usual case, or are we really transformative? Let's never forget that our mission as NGOs is to change this society. And that might mean that we have to be disruptive.
Thank you very much, and I hope you take these questions and think over it. And we'll be seeing each other throughout this year on the Post 2020, and let's talk about it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.